The Declaration of Human Rights in the Internet Age. When in the course of human events it becomes necessary for the world's people to stop the extermination of hated sectors of humanity, it becomes necessary for the Cardano Network to provide sanctuary and anti-genocide mechanisms, since we are connected to one another, and to assume among the powers of the earth the separate and equal station to which the laws of nature and nature's God entitle them. A decent respect to the opinions of mankind requires that they acknowledge the rise of the global police state, acknowledge that governments work together to maintain control at any cost. They should then declare the causes which impel them to deploy sanctuary anti-genocidal mechanisms. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that to secure these rights, computer protocols are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the ADA holder, and to assume among the powers of the earth the separate and equal station to which the laws of nature and of nature's God entitles them. That whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the Cardano Network to alter or to abolish transactions or data on their population, and to institute new protocols, laying the protocol's foundation on the such principles and organizing its powers in such form as to them shall seem most likely to affect Cardano Network users' safety and happiness. Prudence, indeed, will dictate that protocols long established should not be changed for light and transient causes. And accordingly, all experience hath shown that mankind are more disposed to suffer, while evils are sufferable, than to right themselves by abolishing the forms to which they are accustomed. But when a long train of abuses and usurpations, pursuing invariably the same object, evinces a design to reduce them under absolute despotism, it is their duty to protect innocent people from such governments and to provide new guards for their future security. Such has been the patient sufferance of persecuted minorities around the world, and such is now the necessity which constrains them to alter their former systems of government. The history of some governments is a history of repeated injuries and usurpations, all having in direct object the establishment of an absolute tyranny over the world's people. To prove this, let facts be submitted to a candid world. The nation of South Africa has pinned its people against each other as it loots wealth indiscriminately. The South African government is using identity politics to carry out the extermination. Zimbabwe has a relocation program that plans to move Sangani indigenous minorities from ancestral lands. This is a national extermination attempt on a minority within the nation. Ethiopia is using their ID data to target a hated population. Federal forces have stolen property, land, and food supplies from their own populations. The EU has created laws that disenfranchise local African farmers across all nations and favor European corporations. This has led to displacement as people follow the money. This leads them to head to Europe in search of their stolen wealth. The Indian government is working with the super rich to take land away from farmers, which will destabilize one of the largest nations in the world. Two European nations teamed up to take property from ordinary people. A ruling tribe in Arabia has destroyed another's country with help from the most powerful country in the world. Italy and other European nations still practice slavery. They have purposely destabilized African nations in order to maintain a constant supply of slaves. The United States has not only violated human rights, but still continues to uphold slavery. It has been facilitated by the corrupt Mexican government, who has destroyed its own nation at the request of the United States. The 100-year drug war is a campaign to exterminate Native American populations in Mexican territories. This has given birth to cartels, which are the SS arm of the Mexican military. In an attempt to survive, people run north, only to be caged within the nation. Constantly under threat by the American government and its people, the United States government has used and uses its intelligence agencies to manipulate nations and its own people. Blacks, Asians, and Native American descendants have been targeted for extermination since the 1800s. The Myanmar government has been killing its minority population. For exterminating people that nations are tasked to serve. For protecting people that commit genocide by mock trials. From punishment for any murders which they should commit on the inhabitants of the world. For cutting off trade with hated populations with all parties of the world, for imposing taxes on us without our consent, for using these funds to target hated people, for depriving us, in many cases, of the benefits of trial by jury, for transporting minorities beyond their home state to be tried for pretended offenses in historically racist states such as Louisiana, Texas, and Mississippi. Nations have plundered seas, ravaged coasts, bombed towns, and destroyed the lives of the world's people. Nations at times are transporting large armies of foreign mercenaries to complete the works of death, desolation, and tyranny, already begun with circumstances of cruelty and perfidy, scarcely paralleled in the most barbarous ages. And these heads of states are totally unworthy to be the head of a civilized nation. Nations have constrained their fellow citizens, taken captive to bear arms against their country, to become the executioners of their friends and brethren, or to fall themselves by their hands. In every stage of these oppressions, people have petitioned for rest in the most humble terms. Their repeated petitions have been answered only by repeated injury. A government whose character is thus marked by every act which may be defined a tyrant is unfit to be the ruler of a free people. Nations have excited domestic discrimination amongst their populations and have endeavored to fragment society. the merciless nationalist racist propaganda who's known to broadcast a warfare mindset. This is the destruction of the minds of all ages, sexes, and conditions. In every stage of these oppressions, we have petitioned the United States in the most humble terms. Our repeated petitions have been answered only by repeated injury. We seek peace and the end of the war against average people. Any nation whose character is thus marked by every act which may define a tyrant is unfit to be the ruler of a free people. Nor have they been wanting in attentions to their nation's elite brethren. They have warned them from time to time of attempts by their legislator to extend an unwarrantable jurisdiction over them. They have reminded them of these circumstances. They have appealed to their native justice and magnanimity, and they have conjured them by the ties of their common kindred to disavow these usurpations, which would inevitably interrupt their connections and correspondence. They too have been deaf to the voice of justice and of consanguinity. We must therefore acquiesce in the necessity which denounces the genocide of hated populations and hold them, as we hold the rest of mankind, accountable for government actions against humanity. The Cardano Network, therefore, the representative of 88 holders in General Congress, assembled, appealing to 88 holders of the world for the rectitude of our intentions, though in the name and by authority of the good people of these Cardano networks, solemnly publish and declare that these Cardano networks and of right ought to be free and independent network, that there must be anti-genocide mechanisms, that all political connections between hated populations and the people of the world is and ought to be totally protected, and that free and independent nations have full power to levy war, conclude peace, exterminate hated or loved populations, contract alliances, establish commerce, and all other acts of things which independent states may do. And for the support of this declaration, with a firm reliance on the protection of the Cardano Network, we mutually pledge to each other our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor. God bless America. God bless the Congress. And may God bless the world.